Hi everyone, if you like the channel, please do subscribe. So, this one's a little bit unplanned. A lot of my videos are that way, but it wasn't one I anticipated making this evening, tonight. But I think it's very useful to demonstrate the theme that I want to talk about. The case study that I'm going to use, I think, is a useful example. I've been watching the BBC game show Traitors with my mum in the last few days, and this is not the sort of thing I'd usually watch. I've been pretty vocal about reality TV. I stand by everything I said. If you don't know, Traitors is basically a game show set in Ardbroads Castle in the Scottish Highlands. Although there's actually two Ardbroads castles, I'm not sure which one it is. But basically, it's a show in which there's 20 people, and they have to kind of work out who is the traitors among them. And they go through sort of activities each day. Then in the evenings, one is metaphorically murdered, and they have to sort of sit around a table and talk among themselves as to who the traitors are, and it gets pretty tense. It's presented by Claudia Winkleman. A few spoilers here because I'm up to episode 5 on the first series. Um, so if you haven't seen it, I will be talking about some of those details. And if you have seen it, please don't tell me what happens after episode 5. Um, what I'm watching is probably from 2022, so it's already on season 3 or 4, I think. Anyway, um, there's one character on this show, John McManus, and he's a massage therapist. And I want to talk about this guy because I think he is a good example of the sort of toxic sensitivity that I'll be raising in this video. Now, of course, as a game show, there's a lot of strategizing involved. There's a lot of everyone wants to win, so that is part of it. There were a few things I noticed about this guy that stood out as being more than just gameplay. I think he came across as a toxic person, and interestingly enough, since he left the show, he has been arrested for violently attacking a waitress in Edinburgh. Now, a little bit about this guy. When he appeared on the show, he was 49. By his own very loud proclamations, he was a gay man, and he made a big thing of this. And this is kind of relevant to what I'm talking about. Um, Before he was even murdered, he was chosen on that occasion in episode 5. He'd already got hypersensitive with two other contestants. Um, There was, if anyone's seen up to that point, Imran um, and the young scientist, and Aaron, two young guys. So in the case of Imran, he said a throwaway comment about maybe being on the weaker team because of older people. But instead of looking at it as a thing about, well, he's being offensive to the older contestants, he decided to say, as a gay man, it's flight or fight. So he was making that the focus, um, even though Imran hadn't said anything about that. So I thought that was a bit sensitive. But Imran apologized and he sort of accepted it. And I thought, okay, that's that. But then he pulled some crap with the contestant Aaron. And I'll be honest, I was sort of flipping through comments and I think I accidentally saw that Aaron won the thing, which I hadn't seen that. So I think I've just spoiled it for myself. But anyway, what basically happened, the recap if you've seen it, and if you haven't seen it, I've already given the disclaimer. Um, when they went around the table saying who were the traitors and who weren't, a lot of people suspected Aaron might be, and he got quite emotional, upset by that, and he kind of had to walk off, and he was really quite upset about it. And most of the others were kind of sympathetic, but John's attitude, this guy John, was basically to stick his nose up at it and imply that Aaron was acting, like playing it up. Maybe he was, but I just thought this exposes you, John McManus, because in the day's events, we saw Aaron make conversation with John, and I noticed something. So to me, the questions were totally innocent. he was asking about the fact that he's a massage therapist, which he himself has really stated. So it's not like he was prying, just making conversation. Because, between the games and the whole setup in the evening, they have time to kill. So they're going to do that. They're going to make conversation. And John McManus's attitude was very sort of defensive and sensitive. Why is he asking this? Why do you want to know? So to me, he came across as, I'm talking about John here, as a very, very sensitive person. But when um, Aaron was under this pressure to sort of, you know, people thought he might have been a traitor. As it turned out, he wasn't voted on that night. Um, he kind of asked the others about it, but not in an aggressive way. He just wanted to know what their thinking was. And this guy, John, just came across as a complete asshole. He says, it's just an effing game show. Basically, get over yourself. And I'm thinking, you absolute hypocrite. You absolute hypocrite. Since the start, you've been precious, you've been defensive, you've been hypersensitive. So it's fine for you to play the victim, but then you turn this on other people and you get aggressive with other people. I don't usually do this. I don't, I'm not the sort of person to watch Big Brother and talk about contestants. Um, so, maybe people might say I'm being inconsistent or hypocritical there by watching this show. But I will say, me and my mum were discussing the fact that it could be an interesting insight into what happens in juries. When the jury goes back into a room and have to debate through the evidence. Um, it is an interesting insight to see how people's minds work. And to me, this guy, John McManus, personified a toxic person because he played the victim when it suited him and yet had no problem lashing out and basically implying others are being too sensitive. If you know the character I'm talking about, hopefully others will see this. I just think he came across as a totally vain as well, because when he was booted out, his first response was, "Well, I'm obviously a popular character, so they got me as a threat." I did not like the guy one little bit. The first two episodes didn't really stand out. That third episode and fourth episode, I started noticing things about him, and just the combination of hypersensitivity with actually being quite an aggressive person. It's an interesting combination. Um, so to me, that really exemplifies the theme of this video, which is that hypersensitivity can be absolutely toxic. People who go around playing the victim, yet they think they can treat others in an obnoxious way. It's a very, very negative personality trait. And to me, this guy, John McManus, personified it. And the fact that he was arrested in the real world for getting blind drunk and assaulting a waitress in Edinburgh, and there's CCTV footage of him. Basically, not just actually, there's two, a waitress and a waiter. He actually assaulted them. I don't know what happened to him, like if he had to do community service or something. But to me, it shows, yeah, that's his true colours. And the interesting thing is, when it was revealed that he was murdered, a lot of the other contestants were sort of saying, "Oh, he was such a nice guy." I'm thinking, no, he wasn't. When you people look back at the interviews, you might see his true colours. I'm not usually like this in the sense that I don't usually analyze contestants on a TV show, but I do think that it's an interesting observation. I do think that John McManus um, exemplifies the sort of person who combines a toxic personality with hypersensitivity. So it's kind of manipulative because when it suits them, for him, it's the fact that he's a gay man, he will use that. And other people will use it for different reasons. I am very, very, very skeptical of people who use their demographic as a weapon, like as a gay man, as a woman, as a black person, as a white person. I think it's very obnoxious to weaponize that. And I think John McManus does that with the fact he's gay. I don't think any of the other characters could care less that he was gay. But um, I hope the show exposed him, and I hope any potential boyfriends that he has looks out looks at him as a red flag, because he came across as a pretty unpleasant individual to me. Anyway, that's it. I just think that, I mean, we could expand this. I'm talking about game show here. We could expand it to more serious things in the world. So, instance, when you get hyper nationalism combined with hypersensitivity, this could be seen around the world. Some examples off the top of my head: China, Turkey, India. You see sort of this extreme sensitivity with any perceived outside criticism, um, and nationalists lash out. So that hyper nationalism and hypersensitivity is a very toxic mix. I mean, there's some things I understand people being sensitive about. If it's something that is very, very personal, perhaps a relative's death or something that someone has personally struggled with, but I think using something like your sexual orientation or your race or your nationality to weaponize that to try and silence others, I think is extremely cynical and ingenuous because people are individuals. So this guy, John McManus, because as a gay man, I'm thinking, you don't represent all gay men. I mean, I certainly don't. I'm a straight man. But I have gay friends who would look at him and think the guy's obnoxious with his personality. Um, and I would say that unfortunately he played up all the worst stereotypes, which is unfair. On You cannot generalize people. You cannot say that because he's this way, then other gay men are, because they're not. But when someone plays up the stereotype, it doesn't exactly help others. And he